Welcome to the Journey of Gratitude podcast, hosted by Tri Robinson and Ruben Navarrete.
Well, I want to know a little bit more history about the J-3 Cub, how you ended up buying an airplane after that story of your first solo flight and how that went, how then that, you transitioned to the College of Idaho after that. So tell me the story of the J-3 Cub and how you found that.
Yeah. So my idea was in those days, like that possibly my future was about flying. I kind of hoped so.
You were thinking like commercial pilot or something?
Yeah. That was my intention. Mm-hmm. It was funny in those days, though. I didn't know it then, but they had a height requirement, and I was an inch too short. So I actually went eventually to Western Airlines, was flying their simulators and stuff.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but I didn't, not for a job.
Okay.
But just
for fun?
Well, just to explore. And I had a good friend of the family who was a trainer for Western Airlines.
Okay.
And he let me come and fly the simulators and try to see if it's something I really wanted to do. But that's when I found out I was too short. Okay. Not only that, but another thing happened later when I was going for my instrument rating. I had to fly under a hood. And if I could see the ground and the horizon, or, then it was an athletic event, mm-hmm. Flying an airplane. It was just coordination, and I could land anywhere. I was really good at it. But once I had to fly by instruments under a hood, my dyslexia kicked in.
Okay.
And I would always end up turning the wrong direction.
Good
Seriously,
Lord.
I mean, it was really a problem.
So you were somebody who flew by how it feels.
Yeah, just by an athletic, ability.
Instinct.
Really. And that J3 just became an extension of my body.
Yeah, you have to be strong to pilot a plane like that, because you're actually moving them with your physical strength.
Yeah, but it's just a feel.
Yeah,
and you have to have good depth perception and things. Right? But I got to Idaho, and I started renting a plane, and in those days it was cheap,
Yeah.
But still, it was expensive in those days.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's relative. And one day I had rented this airplane and flew to another airport in the Treasure Valley, and I landed. I was shooting landings, and I landed just practicing. And on the edge of the tarmac was this little yellow Cub, J3.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the same exact plane that my dad soloed in Alaska.
Okay, I didn't know he soloed on a J-3 Cub.
Yeah,
really?
He did, on skis.
So you knew, so you were familiar with that kind of aircraft?
Oh yeah, I dreamed about it.
Okay, all right.
And there was one, and it had a for sale sign on it.
Okay.
And so I taxied this other airplane up and got out, and I went over there. I was looking at it, because I'd never had a close look at one.
Oh.
Not really, I guess. Because it was a 1944 World War II reconnaissance airplane. It's old, even then it was old.
Yeah.
And I was looking around it, and this old guy comes out.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, hey, young man, you interested in this airplane? And he had seen it that I had flown in, so I must have had a license, And I said, yeah, I am. This is the same plane my dad flew in Alaska years ago, and I've just always been fascinated. And he says, well, I'll sell it to you, And I said, how much? And he said, $1,200. Now, that plane today, that very plane, by the way, that plane that it was my plane is now in an air museum in Southern California.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a collector's item.
What would it be worth today?
I don't know, but
I'm going to look it up.
Not $1,200.
Not $1,200, but then $1,200. Yeah. I mean, it was probably
especially restored. And this thing was in good shape, And I said, well, it was a tail dragger.
Yeah.
And I had always flown tricycle with a wheel.
Yeah, tail dragger is not easy to fly.
No, it's a total different experience. landing especially and taking off, but especially landing was a very, very different experience because you couldn't see out the front of the plane. You had to look out the side. Yeah, you just nose up. You drug the tail when you landed. So, so I said, well, I've never flown a tail dragger before. And he says, oh, that's no problem. I'll teach you how to do it. You come up with the money, I'll give you lessons. And I said, so, okay. So I did the math, like, okay, I had to have 200 hours for my commercial license.
Okay.
And so I had to put in these hours at, I don't know, $15 an hour then.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought, so I did the math and I realized it would be a lot more than $1,200.
Yeah.
So
gotcha. So you're thinking buy the plane,
fly it, sell it,
plane.
and it's like free, you know. And I would get my commercial license for nothing. So everything was a payphone then, right? And so I go to the dorm room at the college, and I, drop my coins in and dial my parents that night. And I gave them the hard sell. Well, I think because my dad had so many hours in the J-3 Cub, I know what was in his mind. If we buy this plane, I can come up and fly it.
Oh, gotcha.
And so he was like,
because he had a lot of fond memories from his days.
He did. So he said he'd front the money, right?
So I wonder what your mom thought.
Well, my mom was a pretty good sport, I got to admit, because I always said in those days, if you really don't love your son, give him an airplane at 17. He'll probably kill himself. And anyway, I go back to this guy. And I said, yeah, I'll give you $1,200. And so he says, okay, I'll give you a lesson. So
your dad gave you the $1,200 and you were...
I bought the plane and I get in it. And this other guy gets with me. He had been a spray pilot, for like a crop duster. He had spray equipment, but he had taken it all off to sell it. And we get out, and he walks me through it. And I managed to get the thing in the air, and you fly it with a stick, not a wheel.
Right.
And it's a very different feeling than anything I had done, And so I'm flying this thing, and so I come around the pattern and set up a landing, and I managed to land this thing without killing myself. And he's talking me through it. And to get on the ground, and I mean, it was very different. It's like I was learning to fly all over again in a way. The guy gets out of the plane. I have my logbook that says that particular flight was 15 minutes. 15 minutes, and he left. He says, okay, you're on your own. And then I was scared to death. I thought, I was lucky to survive the first landing, because it was...
Yeah, but you don't know. How's that going to...
No, you're coming in and
You could have been lucky.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I go back to the college, and I have a really good roommate that became a very good friend of mine. His name was Johnny Bingham. He says, hey, take me flying. And I go, you know what? I think I need to do a little flying myself because I don't want to kill you. I don't want to kill anybody until I figure this out. And so literally I had to teach myself. Nowadays you have to be certified in a tail dragger. It's a big deal. But in those days it was just like get in and fly. Yeah. And I was terrified for the next, 10 hours of flying that thing.
But you had learned from your earlier stories that you had to overcome that.
I did. And I just bit the bullet and I did it.
So now you're a college student with his own plane. And how old are you at this point?
Probably 18.
18.
Yeah. And so one day I take off and I realized even as on takeoff, you always do a walk around on your plane, check everything out. I don't know what, but I missed. I had a low tire. And I realized it when I was taking off.
Right.
I thought, I think, I don't know why I thought this, but I thought maybe it would be better if I landed on a softer strip than a concrete pavement. So I knew there was this old dirt strip up by the river. And there was all these old biplanes on it. the old crop duster biplanes.
In Caldwell? In the Caldwell area? Okay.
Yeah, outside of Caldwell, called Hubler Field. And so I decided to land at Hubler Field and see if they'll have some air to air up my tire. So I did. I landed there and I taxied up to this old hangar. All these old relic airplanes, that they were using for fixing up for crop dusting. And this old guy comes out. His name's Lee, and that guy just embraced me for some reason. I don't know what.
Yeah.
He just said, "You need to keep your airplane here, not over there."
Okay.
And then the guy who owned the field, his name was Bill Hubler, his Hubler Field. He came out and he says, "You could tie your airplane down right in my backyard," which his house was right there.
Okay.
And so
Wow, you did.
And so I did, and I kept it there. And all the pilots that would come in and out of that airstrip were these old guys that had their whole life was flying by the seat of their pants, and they had all these
like
stories.
your dad, and they knew that plane.
And every night, about 5 o'clock, these guys would all gather in the hangar and tell stories and drink whiskey.
Wow.
And I did. I didn't drink whiskey, but I would sit there and just like a sponge, I was listening to these stories and taking it in.
Did you ever take any of them in the plane, or did you ever?
Well, one day, I was gassing up my plane there, and Bill Hubler came out, who was a crop duster. By the way, interesting story. That was, I don't even know how many. That was 55 years ago. And I just did his funeral.
Oh, wow. He lived a long time.
Yeah, and a whole nother story, but it was really, really an honor,
And I have one question. It might sound like a diversion, but it's something that you had mentioned earlier. Did your dad ever come up to fly that plane?
Yeah. I got a great story there.
Okay.
But those guys embraced me, and they helped me do all of my own mechanics. So that it literally cost me nothing to keep that plane.
Wow.
And one day I went to Bill Hubler, and I said, "I want to learn to do a loop and a spin. I never had done any aerobatics." And he just jumped in the plane, and said, "Let's go." And he took me up and taught me how to do a spin and a loop, and then he got out. We landed, and that was my lesson. It was almost like the first guy, but I don't know. I got to where I could fly that plane and land it pretty much anywhere in the backcountry and
you could
roads.
do these aerobatics and
it was which a J-3 Cub isn't really known for aerobatics, but it would do these basic things. I got in trouble a couple times because of it.
That sounds insane. So let's talk about that a little bit. Did you ever you did aerobatics when you had other passengers, right? I mean, didn't you?
Once in a while.
Okay, once in a while.
Yeah, it depended who they were.
Okay.
Yeah, but this one day, my dad came up one day. This was another thing. And he loved that thing. And so he'd get in, and he hadn't flown since World War II.
Right.
But he jumped in that thing. It was like riding a bicycle for him. He just
knew how to fly.
He just knew how to fly. And one day we're coming in on an approach, and we were kind of high. And so he cross-controlled the plane. It's a maneuver called a slip. And the plane just almost falls just like a rock. Yeah. Like it just loses altitude really fast. It scared the heck out of me because I thought we were crashing,
Right.
And then he corrected it and landed perfectly. And I go, "What was that?" And he said, "That's a slip." And so he taught me how to do this thing called a slip. And I used it forever after that.
Yeah.
You could land, because you could really hit everything on a dime. Well, he told me this one day that, and I don't even know why he told me this, but he says, "Listen, something you should know." He says, "If you ever get above clouds or you get in bad weather and you get, above clouds, you can't see the ground, you can't fly through the clouds, you'll get vertigo and you'll just rip the wings off your airplane. You won't know right side from up, and you'll tear the plane apart."
Yeah, it's a known phenomenon. Isn't that how JFK Jr. died?
Yeah, a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And you have to have instruments to fly through clouds, and this had no instruments. It had a compass that sort of worked, an airspeed indicator, and an altitude.
Sort of worked.
Yeah, but he said, if that happens to you, the thing to do is to go into a spin. And a spin is a maneuver where you pull it up, stall the airplane till the airplane literally stops. And you kick a rudder, pull the stick into your lap. The thing goes over and starts just spinning like a spiral down. But he says the beauty of that is it'll always stay on the same attitude.
The beauty of that just sounds the most like terrifying experience. So anyway.
But I had spun it before
Okay.
because Bill Hubler had taught me how to do it. You know? So I knew how to do a spin.
All right.
And so he told me, just spin it and just go all the way through the clouds until you can see the ground again, and then you can right the airplane. And and you'll survive it. And I don't know why he told me that, but I always remembered it, And one day I took my roommate, Johnny Bingham. He wanted to go flying, and we took off. It was a beautiful, crisp fall day.
That poor guy, he probably didn't know.
Yeah, no, he had some close calls. I scared the heck out of him. That guy's lucky to be alive. Yeah, we did a few scary things. But anyway, I climb up, and I climb out of the pattern. And I said, "Where do you want to go, Johnny?" And he says, "I don't care. Let's just go flying." And on the dash, the firewall of the airplane, was a little brass plaque. And it says, "Do not exceed 14,000 feet." Now,
that sounds like a challenge.
And I never knew why that was there. I go,
I guess we're going to probably find out.
And so I said to Johnny, this thing always tells this plane shouldn't go over 14,000 feet. But I can't understand why. And he says, well, let's find out. So we start climbing. And, a J-3 is not a big, powerful airplane, but we just kept climbing, and we get higher and higher. And pretty soon, coming out over the Oahe Mountains to the west, from the west, was this big, huge bank of clouds. And we were flying, we were circling over the valley. And then we got up to where we were actually higher than the top of this cloud bank. And I said, maybe if we get over these clouds, we can get more lift, because we were about 12,000 feet. And I went over the top of the clouds, and it did. It worked. We got some updrafts, and it took us up, and it took us to 14,000 feet. Like it was 13, 9. And we were watching the altimeter, and it hit 14,000 feet. And the minute it did, the engine just quit.
Died. Oh. God.
And the thing about these old planes is it has no starter.
Yeah.
You have to prop it from outside.
Oh, okay.
So there's no way to start it unless you can dive it and hope that it might windmill and start. But I got carb ice, and it just froze up the engine. And we're sitting up there above the clouds, and I realized I couldn't get back over the edge of this cloud bank, glide that far. I had come too far. And I knew I had to go through the clouds.
Right.
And the engine's dead. It's total silence.
Is Johnny Bingham aware that
Johnny Bingham doesn't know what to think or say. And he goes, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, just hang on." And so I remember what my dad said, what my father had said, right?
Yep.
And so I pull the thing up into a stall, pull the stick back in my lap, press the left rudder, and the thing falls over into a spin, and we start spinning. And Johnny Bingham, I told him this story. I go, "Did I tell this story right?" And he says, "No, you didn't tell it near like it was." I was screaming, "Are we going to die? Are we going to die?" Because he had never been in a spin before, which is a scary maneuver. And so we're spinning, and pretty soon we come into the clouds. And I mean, the clouds are just black, dark.
Yeah.
You can't see anything. I know sometimes when you fly with an airline, or
you'll go through it briefly, and it gets really dark.
And you can't see anything. Yeah. And this is a pretty thick cloud bank, and it feels like it's forever. It just feels like it's forever. Then I started thinking, what if I flew far enough to the west that I got over the top of the mountains? Maybe these clouds, I'm going to hit the mountains before I get out of the clouds. And then that was going through my mind and my imagination. And I had, totally couldn't see anything, didn't know where we were. We were just spinning through this,
Falling through the clouds.
falling through the clouds. And I'm holding this thing, and I'm holding this thing, man, this stick, just wanting with everything in me. I wanted to right the plane and fly and try to save myself. But I just remembered what my dad had said. And so it was like later, when I became a Christian, I remember this thing of holding on to the promise of the Father. Like, hold on to the promise of God for your life. Don't let go. No matter what, just hang on. And that's what in my head, I go, just hang on to the promise of my Father.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, I didn't really know the Lord or anything.
Yeah.
But what a lesson in life it was. And I hung on and I hung on, and I just was praying that I wasn't going to hit the top of a mountain before I got out the bottom of these clouds. And then, like, sometimes when you're in an airline, you're flying, and all of a sudden there's a little opening, and you can see, and then it closes again. And so that we came down, there was that opening where we could see the ground for a minute, you know, and we could see the Snake River below us, way below us, just this little, line, ribbon, and I realized we would be okay, And then it closed again, and it was dark again, and then it finally it opened. And I relaxed the controls of the plane, and the plane immediately righted itself. And I could see in the distance Hubler Field, it's long, thousands of feet below, but I could see it. And I knew we were going to be okay. And then, because we hit drier air, the engine, the prop windmilled, the engine started, and we flew back. And I remember that, what did you do? Some people ask me, what did you do? And I said, Johnny said, let's go do that again.
Oh my
Which
God.
is so crazy, yeah.
And you're thinking, good Lord,
I was just
get
like,
me
right
on the
then I thought,
ground.
I'm just glad to be alive right now, And there were so many experiences with that old plane like that I had through those years. Sometimes I wake up in the night, even now, in a sweat, thinking I shouldn't have lived through that.
Well, in that story alone, there's a lot of lessons, and you talked about the one just about having trust and faith in what God promises us and everything that we have in Scripture that tells us that we can hang on to, and we find ourselves in life feeling blind like that, descending through terrible times, not knowing if we're going to survive.
Everything's gray.
Everything's gray. Everything is.
You're kind of in this position of vertigo in your life,
And you don't know what's up and what's down, and so you have that. But then one of the things that I think is interesting is that you were listening and hearing the words of your father. And I remember after my father passed away, I had he was a leathersmith, and I brought all of his stuff up here to Idaho, and I spent hours, I think, back down days and in my evenings. I was single at the time. I didn't have a lot going on. We were very involved in work during the day, but I was at home alone at night most evenings. And so I would go down to that leather shop and I would make stuff. And I would often very clearly hear his voice, not his real voice, but the things that he said to me would echo back into my mind as I did the craft. And suddenly, when he wasn't there, the things that I needed, he had put in me, and they just needed to be echoed back in my mind as I would work on the stuff. And I would remember the things that he said, and they would be reminders of how to actually do this. Because at the time, I really wasn't listening to my dad. I would hear the story, and it would go in one ear and out the other. But there at the time when I needed it, it was there. It was there, sort of like this story. But what that has taught me as a dad in this part of my life, that to have conversations with your kids, to talk to them, and just tell them things about your life, tell them about the lessons you've learned, and they may not listen to it. They may act like they're uninterested and don't care, but it will come back.
Right. And also the issues of character and integrity, those things are passed on.
They are.
how you live life.
Right.
Yeah, those are valuable things. And I know I'm the same way. I'm a storyteller,
Right.
and I've told my kids stories their whole life.
Yeah.
And I have to believe that it has something to do with the formation of their life.
I do think so. I do feel like it echoes in their life for eternity. Like we live on. Like we may, pass away, we may die, whatever, but like I still carry my dad's voice in my heart. I still hear the things he said, and my mom. I still hear those things and the wisdom that they gave me, and they come back like scripture. Like if you memorize scripture, it comes back when you need it, and it's there when
And
you're in
that's
that
the
time.
promise of the Father.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And it's not we may die, it's we will die.
Yeah.
And when you're in the winter season of your life, you start becoming acutely aware that you only have a short time on this earth.
Yeah.
And I guess it's another message for another time that we want to talk about. But like, how would you, in the winter season, how best should you invest what you got left?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, that is a good question. Now, I have a story back to the J-3 Cub. Was it Johnny Bingham that was with you when you went and landed on that mesa and lost the tail wing or tail wheel?
It was him. Poor guy.
Tail wheel.
Yeah.
That poor guy. I mean, does he realize just how close he came to losing his life a few times?
I reunited with him later in life.
Yeah.
It was 50 years I hadn't heard or seen from him. And one day we reconnected, went to lunch, and just started remembering those stories.
Right. It would be interesting to hear those stories from his perspective. But tell that story, because that is an interesting story.
Typical day, took off Hubler Field, Johnny and I, what should we go do? And I always had a little bit of survival equipment in my plane. I had a little 22, and a few things, sleeping bags and a few things. There wasn't a lot of space. I think we actually took sleeping bags because I don't know, I can't remember, but we took off, went out over the Wahi Mountains, and I remember on a previous flight that I'd seen these Indian dwellings in the side of this cliff off of this flat top mesa as it dropped down into the Oahe River. And I said, let's go see if we can land on this mesa. And we had a rope so we could rappel into these caves.
It sounds like something from Indiana Jones.
So anyway, we get there, and I'm flying around the mesa, and it looks pretty good. This grass is like a foot deep or so. So that made it look pretty steep. What I didn't realize is under the grass was a lot of volcanic rock.
Oh, okay.
And so I came in right on the edge of the mesa. I came in and sat down, and as the plane sat down, and there was this huge crash noise and a thud, and the planes came to a pretty fast stop. And I go, uh-oh, I didn't know what I did, but it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And we got out of the airplane, and the tail wheel had hit a rock and ripped off. So there's this kind of a set of springs, like, that came off the back, kind of drug on that. But the belly of the plane hit some lava rock and ripped open. And I had a patch kit in the plane with the, dope, this kind of glue called dope, and you put this, just enough in case something like this did happen. Well, anyways, I told Johnny, I said, well, go see if you can find the wheel, and I'll patch this hole in the belly.
Go find the wheel.
But it was cold. It was windy, and it was kind of cold day, and the dope didn't set up because of the temperature. And so I go, man, I think we're going to have to let this set overnight. He found the wheel, and he came back, but the bolts that held it were all ripped off and lost. So there's no way to attaching the wheel back on.
Oh.
And so we found an old fence post, an old juniper fence post, and some barbed wire. And we wrapped it on those springs. So I had it like the old airplanes used to have a tail drag. So I made it basically a tail drag.
Stick.
Yeah, stick hanging off the back of the thing. And
Gosh. Well, were you worried that you wouldn't be able to take off, that it would be too much drag?
With the spring, the steel spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I'd ripped the belly again because it was
Oh,
too low
yeah.
to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And so while we were waiting for the dope to dry, I said, well, we probably going to spend the night here. And we heard some checkers off the edge of this cliff. So I got the rope that we brought, and I repelled. We actually tied the rope to the airplane because there was nothing else to tie it to, and I repelled off this cliff and went down. And there was a cave, and the cave was a kind of a pretty tall rock.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I'm going to land on that rock, and I had this little 22 hanging over my back on a piece of string or something, rope. And I got down there, and when I got on the rope, the whole cave erupted in rattlesnakes.
Yeah, this does sound like
I guess it does. I never thought that, but and I mean, all this buzzing going on, and this one snake sticks his head up, and I yell at Johnny like, there's snakes down here. And he says, well, shoot one for dinner. Shoot. So I shoot this snake, and he lowers a tent pole with a tent hook on the bottom for the peg to hold the tent down. We had a little pup tent. And he ties that all together and lowers it down to me. And I hook this snake, and fish it out of there. And anyway, I repel further and get out of there and got hiked back around.
And this is all within an
same
hour
afternoon,
or so
yeah.
of the same afternoon of
Yeah,
you like
same afternoon.
losing the wheel, trying to fix the plane,
And
rappelling down into a cave,
Yeah,
killing a snake.
so we cooked the snake. We built a fire, cooked the snake, and have snake for dinner. The next morning, the wind blows up in the night, really starts blowing, and the plane starts moving towards the edge of the mesa. The wind picks up the plane and starts hopping it towards the mesa. So we spent most of the night hanging onto the airplane, pushing it back,
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
And boy, we were exhausted by morning. I said, let's get out of here, So I said, you hold up the tail and I'm going to rev up the engine, and then you jump in, and I mean, the plane's
What
moving.
happens if you didn't get in?
Well, yeah, I'm gonna have to stop. But he jumps in sideways. It's the doors on this one side, and he gets in, and just as he does, I mean, this gust of wind hits us, and we just off the ground and fly back to Hubler Field.
Yeah.
When we got back to Hubler Field, I remember landing that day in the morning. It was kind of mid-morning, landing, and that stick just dragging down the runway.
Oh,
Luckily,
geez.
it's a dirt strip. And old Lee, the old guy, he's sitting there looking at me and just shaking his head, like, because we didn't tell him we were going to be gone for the night. He'd spent most of the night anxiously waiting for us to get back. Didn't know where we were, And I learned a big lesson from that too. That people care about you.
Yeah.
And sometimes you forget that. And anyway, I had to apologize. But that was a rich, rich, rich season of my life, and that airplane added so much to the richness of my youth, to the springtime of my life.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's a lot of other stories in the book about that plane and what it did, and your close calls and that narrow escapes and all of that. And it's amazing. I've read through that. I'm like, it is amazing that you survived that. I think reading that with eyes of 2025, it's really, it's a bygone era for sure. The world isn't that way anymore. And I do feel like we've lost something, in a culture where we are spoon-fed so much.
Too many rules and regulations, and it's understandable because there's so many more airplanes now and so many more people, and so you just have to. It's a different world.
It is a different world, and it's sad. But I feel like there's a way to connect with that by disconnecting from, I think, a lot that the world wants to offer. I think a lot of young people have miss out on this type of a life because number one, they don't think it's possible for them. Number two, regulations. Number three, population and whatnot. But I just think it's important to, live a life that you can look back on with this kind of like what do you call it? Just I don't know, just the reflection on this kind of a life is just it's just foreign, I think, to a lot of people. And I don't know. But thanks for sharing all that. I mean, there's a lot more in the book, of course. I wish we could cover them all because they're great stories. But yeah.
Well, thanks,
All right.
Ruben.
Thanks, man.